the tooth to this direction, and this alveolar process is not remodeled, the result will be that the tooth is appearing in the oral cavity, and it is nonsense, of course. It is nonsense. It couldn't be the consequence of an orthodontical treatment. But when you move this tooth to this direction, you have to, of course, metabolic processes should remove the bone here on the side facing to the tooth, and the bone membrane should form new bone on the other side to maintain the previous bits of the alveolar process, because this alveolar process is shifted, and the tooth shouldn't appear or shouldn't break through the alveolar process during treatment. But sometimes it is an unwanted process or consequences of a treatment that especially the lower anteriors will reflect or show, gingival recession and alveolar bone recession because of an unwanted consequence of the treatment. Maybe type of this treatment, we don't know, okay, because it depends on the clinical situation. So you can see here this translational movement. So this is the normal situation. So on the pressure side, osteoclastic cells are active. On the tension side, osteoblasts are active. New bone is formed on the tension side, and bone is removed from the pressure side and the frontal surface of the lamina dura. This is the inner cortical plate or lamina dura with osteoclasts. And you can see the tension side. On the tension side, the vessels are dilating, okay? So the diameter of the vessels is higher with higher blood flow rate, and you can see osteoblastic activity, and new collagen is formed on the tension side again. So it is the remodeling of the collagen on the tension side. And you can see the effect of the periodontal force to the periodontal tissues. First, we have the mechanical stress, and the alveolar structure is bent, because when you press the tooth, the alveolar bone is bent, or the alveolar bone is tilted, or it is under pressure, the alveolar structure, and when you press the bone, the crystallized structure, so-called piezoelectric current is generated inside the bone, So when you press the bone with force, with orthodontical forces, for example, inside the bone there will be an electrical current or voltage, electrical voltage, which is generated inside the bone, and this could be a type of stimulus for the osteoclast to migrate to the site. Okay, so this could be an explanation why the osteoclasts migrating to the site of the pressure zone. Okay, and in some seconds, the PDL fluid is under pressure, of course, on the pressure side, and because of this fluid is under pressure, you will see that the fluid is streaming, the fluid is flooding or streaming inside the periodontal membrane, okay, inside the periodontal membrane, and this fluid stream could generate again streaming potential inside the tissues. And the vessels are partly obliterated or sometimes dilated under tension zone, okay, under tension zone, and the oxygenization is reduced, so oxygen capacity is reduced, and some bioactive molecules will be producing interleukins, cytokines, cyclic AMP, and PGA is produced, prostaglandin E is produced, thanks. So some bioactive molecules are producing, which are very important in bone metabolism. Okay, these molecules are bioactive molecules of the bone metabolism. And in some hours, the cell activation will induce enzyme productions which are necessary to destroy the collagens and the bones, okay, and osteoclast and osteoblastic activity will form the basis of tooth movement. The tooth movement. And I mentioned you not just the bone, but the surrounding soft tissues are changed. We have, of course, the periodontal fibers and the gingival fibers. You will see, remodeling in the periodontal fibers and the gingival fibers, but this remodeling in these tissues, in these soft tissues, is very, very slow. It is much slower than the remodeling of the bone. So the bone is changed relatively fast, and in some weeks, but you need more time for the periodontal and even more time for the gingival fiber remodeling or reorganization. So for the formation of the gingival fibers in the new place of the tooth, where the tooth is moved during treatment, the periodontal fibers and gingival fibers should be remodeled at that therapeutical site, treatment site, therapeutical site, and this is why you make the active phase of the treatment. When you finish the active phase of the treatment with bone resorption and with bone remodeling, you need an additional phase of the orthodontical treatment, and this is the retention phase of the orthodontical treatment, which is usually 2 times higher than the active phase of the treatment. I mentioned you that this second phase of the orthodontical treatment is needed for the soft tissue and collagen remodeling, because the soft tissue and fiber remodeling of the soft tissues need 2 times more time in the retention phase. Usually, I mentioned you splinting the tooth or the removable appliances during the night is used for in this retention phase. Okay, and when you failed to exert this retention phase, the treatment result will be relapsed. Okay, so your gain in the treatment will disappear, because you have to stabilize the teeth, the straightened arch, in the straightened position. So the arch should be stabilized in the straightened tooth position when the active phase of the orthodontical treatment is finished. So you have to place splints, bonded splints, or removable night guards, during the night appliances. And I mentioned you that we don't know exactly why the osteoclasts are migrating to the site of pressure, but we have some explanations. explanations why the osteoblasts are stimulated. So these could be the stimuli, these things, these three hypotheses could be the explanation why the osteoclasts are migrating to the site of bone resorption. Because I mentioned you, the osteoblasts are there, so there is no need to migrate. The osteoblasts, the bone forming cells, but the bone removal cells, the osteoclasts, should be differentiated and should be migrated to the site, but they should know where to go, of course. And we have these explanations, for example, streaming potential or fluid flow streaming potential stimulus. You know, I mentioned you when you press the periodontal membrane, the periodontal fluid is streaming between the macromolecules and the streaming potential. The streaming potential is generated. So locally, the tissue potential, the tissue current is changed, and this could be the reason why the osteoclasts know to migrate to the area. And there is a piezoelectric explanation, So it means that when you change the bone structure, you know, the bone is a mineralized tissue, as I mentioned you, with crystals, and when you deform the crystallized structure, piezoelectric current is generated, potential current is generated, and so again there is a change, current potential, electrical potential change in the bone, and the osteoclast will know to migrate to the affected area. And there is another explanation when you deform mechanically or the tissues, the cytoskeleton of the tissue deformation will inform or will stimulate the osteoclast to migrate the site of under treatment. And this could be the result of osteoclast and osteoblast activation, the result will be. And the other topic, the bone formation and bone growth. We have in the orofacial structures, in the orofacial area, we have two forms, intermembranous and endochondral bone formation. You know, intermembranous bone formation, the bone is forming in soft tissues. Okay, in soft tissues. For example, under bone membrane, you have this intermembranous bone formation. So the outer surface of the mandible and the outer surface of the maxilla is covered by the bone membrane. The bone membrane is the soft tissue, and the inner side of the bone membrane is populated by very active bone-producing cells, and this bone membrane can produce new bone during bone growth of the mandible. So this is the way why our mandible during childhood and during development will be bigger and higher, and the bone is much more bigger in an adult. The mandible is higher, bigger than in a young person. And we have these intermembranous and we have endochondral bone formation. You know, the endochondral means we have first cartilage, and after this cartilage becomes bone. So at the side of the cartilage, new bone is formed. So in intermembranous, no cartilage plate or no cartilage area before the bone is formed, but in endochondral bone formation, you may know this from anatomy. I don't know what is your subject, but you may know this two types of or three types of bone formation in anatomy. And you can see here the growth of the mandible. We have in the mandible, we have, sorry, in the maxilla, we have two types of bone formation. the intramembranous again and the endochondral. Endochondral bone is in the mid-palatal suture, you know. In the mid-palatal suture, it is active only in childhood, this mid-palatal suture, but when you make rapid and very fast expansion, it is an orthodontical term, expansion of the, when you widen the maxilla with orthodontical treatment, you know, you use the activity, the endochondral bone formation activity of this mid-palatal suture. So you will accelerate the activity, the new bone formation capacity of the mid-palatal suture when you use this type of orthodontical appliance. And on the other sides, on the bone surface of the maxilla and in the tuberous area, in the vault or in the processes, in the palatal processes, alveolar processes, we have intramembranous ossifications. Okay, intramembranous ossifications, because the new bone is formed because of the maxillary bone membrane. And this is the mid-palatal suture. It is removable. It could be removable or fixed appliance, you know. And this appliance will separate the maxilla, and of course, you know, this is the mid-sagittal suture, and we have two maxillae on both sides. We have, and when you separate or widen the distance between the two quadrants, you will see that new bone is formed in the middle, where the mid-palatal cartilage plate is located, you know. So you can accelerate the mid-palatal cartilage plate activity for new bone formation with this treatment, okay? With this treatment, where this is the appliance, separate Hyrax, it is named as Hyrax appliance. So endochondral bone formation, and you can see oppositional bone membrane activity, for example, in the tuber region, you know, so where the molars are forming, molars, tooth germs of the molars, that area is growing or forming with oppositional bone formation, you know, with this intramembranous bone activity. And in normal growth of the palate, you can see that new bone is forming here on the oral side, and the bone is removed from the nasal side. You know, the whole maxilla is growing downward and forward, you know, so to this direction. The maxilla is going, this is the final growing direction, down and forward. And during this, here, new bone is deposited, and of course here, bone is removed, but here, the bone is removed again. So the palate is forming so-called letter or expanding letter B principle. So the bone is moving imaginary or forming or growing downward and forward, and as you can see, new bone is forming here on the inner side, oral side, but on the outer side and nasal side, the bone is removed from the palate, and this is the expanding V principle you can find in growing of the upper maxilla upper jaw or the palate. And you can see that the direction of the maxilla and between the sutures, you know, the cranial sutures between the maxilla and the surrounding bone. That is a new bone mass which is deposited here, and these bony sutures will produce, or the new bone here into these bony sutures will be resulted this direction of the maxilla, this growing direction of the maxilla. And the mandible, you know, again we have intramembranous in the body of the mandible, body and in the ramus, but the, you know, condyle of the mandible is an center or the side, it is better the term, of encondylar bone formation, you know. So we have intramembranous all around the mandible, intramembranous bone formation, but the condyle is growing, the condyle, that is a subcondylar cartilage, you know, subcondylar cartilage, and the condyle is growing with this cartilage plate activity, you know, with this encondylar or endocondylar bone formation. So you can see here the intramembranous bone production. Bone is deposited here and removed here, and from the inner side the bone is removed, and to the outer side of the mandible new bone is deposited, you know, because of the intramembranous bone formation and deposition. And here there is the subcondylar cartilage or condyle cartilage, which is acting or producing the endocondylar or the bone production. So cartilage we have here, and this cartilage growing is responsible for the 1/3 of the growing of the whole range, okay, 1/3. But the other 2/3 is the responsibility of the intramembranous growing. And you can see here the direction of the mandible again, and the whole mandibular structure is changed, of course, and even the position of the alveolar process and the teeth and the foramen, mandibular foramen is changed. The whole mandible, the structure of the mandible is remodeled during growing. Okay, we have some factors which can affect the growing of the upper and lower jaws. You know, of course, the timing factor, the age of the person is very important. So you have to time the active treatment, orthodontical treatment, where the growing capacity of the bone is increased. So you, in this case, you just modify the growth of the bone. So when there is no growing potential inside the bones, the treatment will not be very effective. So, and the gender may affect the bone, the growing or the development of the bone, and we have some bad habits, laxism, for example, and illness, sickness, and nutrition, and hormonal changes can, and racial and ethnic differences make us. And this is the changes, and this is the final slide. It is important again because here you can see the explanations why you can timing the orthodontical treatment differently according to the the person or patient sex. So in females, you can see a continuous, constant growing, okay? And that is no acceleration of the growth of the mandible in adolescent time. in adolescent time. But in males, so in boys, you will see that in adolescent time, the maxilla and the mandible growing is increased significantly. So that's why you should time the treatment, your treatment to that period, because you have to just modify the growing capacity of the upper and lower jaws, and your treatment will be very effective, and there is a hormonal connection. Testosterone will increase the condyle and the mandible growing significantly. That's why the male mandible is significantly bigger than female mandible. Okay, so the hormonal change and the hormonal dependency is behind this. Okay, you have an idea. Thanks.